Welcome everyone to our Tuesday night community chat. I'm your host Kelly Wilkins from the My Self-Reliance channel, and so good to be with you all tonight. Before we get started with our amazing guest speaker, who is Jarod Santana from WA, from I'm going to say the words wrong now, Successional
Land Solutions.
Land Solutions. Thank you, Jarod.
That's okay.
I will jump in with some quick announcements, including our summit. So tickets are going on sale by the end of this week for the Self-Reliance Summit, which is 10 days of exceptional speakers, one of which is Jarod, who is speaking tonight, will be coming on the summit. And it's really about bringing together the skills and expertise of people who can help us find solutions to getting out of the system. So that we know the system's broken, we know that the solution is within our own hands, our own capabilities, and we have plenty of people across Australia who have already been doing with these solutions across all the different topics, and we're bringing that to you. We've got 20 speakers over 10 days, some really amazing events as well, not just online but in person, and tickets go on sale for that later this week. So very exciting. If you go to the myselfreliance.com.au website, the information is starting to appear on, and the speakers are starting to appear on there as well, so you can check out who the lineup is. It's very exciting because it's going to be accessible for everyone. So how it works is there is a $10 cover charge for the whole 2 weeks of amazing speakers. You pay the $10 one time to be able to access live as we go to live recording. Then we have 48 hours you can watch the recording for free. But if you want to access all of the summit on demand, then it's a $48 upgrade and cost, and that's it. You can enter, get your own login details to enter anytime and replay the amazing talks that we have coming for you. So with that, I am going to introduce our amazing speaker, Jarod, who is from Perth in WA, and he has Successional Land Solutions for anyone who wants to farm, but not just for temporary measures. This is Successional is about your children and their children and their children. So as you might have seen in the promo, it's like chess, playing chess, thinking 4 or 5 moves ahead so that you can have ongoing food forests, I guess. So I'm going to hand it over to Jarod to take it away and tell us all about it. First of all, Jarod, tell us what that means in your words, Successional Land Solutions, and then where it all got started.
Yeah, thank you, Kelly. A newly formed consultancy business. I manage a little orchard in the hills, and I'm starting a very large farm over 100 acres eventually in Bridgetown as well. And essentially through my experience with many different forms of farming and also complementary businesses and complementary enterprises like value-adding the food and packaging it and selling it, I saw really a gap in the sense that food businesses sometimes go through very big growth at all different levels, from very small farm businesses all the way up to very large, and then they don't actually succeed or successionally move into particularly family farms, into the children and the family continuing to farm that land. There's a double meaning as well, which is related to successional agroforestry. And that's all about using ecological succession and the spiral up of fertility that happens when you work with the power of ecological succession. And I'll talk about where you can find more resources about all of these things towards the end as well. So yeah, like I said, 15 years or so in many, many different facets of the food industry, not just farming, but mostly farming, viticulture, oenology, orchards, biodynamics, crop farming, pasture, pastoral farming for livestock, and many, many other things. So even market gardening as well, and seed saving. So I've brought it all together in a holistic framework. So I use holistic management, Alan Savory, to make sure that we get a triple bottom line. So it's financially secure and responsible and sustainable. It's ecologically sustainable, ecologically responsible, and then also socially as well. And that's where it ties into the succession into the next generation as well in a big way with what I teach, especially or in my consultancy. So yeah, that's it in a nutshell, I suppose. But if we want to go into some of the issues around food, a lot of people have been asking me lately, is there a food shortage, or is there going to be a food shortage? That seems to be a big issue at the moment. And the reply I've got now really is no, there's no food shortage. There's more food produced now than ever before, and even more healthy food produced now than ever before. However, we do have a food distribution, value adding, and succession to the next generation of wisdom or knowledge in that food. And yeah, that's really what I help people to comprehend, is how they can not only on the land and the soil and the ecological principles that can work for farming, but also the succession onto the next generation to not lose that knowledge or lose that land wisdom, and hopefully bring more young people into farming enterprises in a really intelligent way.
Beautiful. And that's really important, isn't it, that we pass the knowledge on and to the next generation and not lose it.
Yeah, that's been probably one of the big brain drains away from land and into the cities is, smart, entrepreneurial, hardworking young people who have gone off the farm. They've been told that, there's no profits and there's no life on a farm, that, go and get a city job. But there are many examples around the world, and certainly with my new farm, will become a proper educational hub for setting up very, very low startup, ecologically driven and profitable within the first and even more profitable in the second year farming enterprises that have got many examples around the world that I've also been involved with throughout Australia and New Zealand. And so just encouraging anyone, but particularly young people, that they can actually start up on as little as $20,000 up to $50,000 and make a farm profitable from the word go. Of course, there's many skills and a lot of dedication and concentration and a pathway to get to that, of course. But it is possible for young people to enter farming enterprises, even without owning land. So That's really what one of my big goals with the consultancy and with the education I'm putting out there.
So what size farms would you consult with, or at the moment, like, it's not the mum and dads then that you are consulting, it's kind of more people who are entrepreneurial with their farming?
Not necessarily. I have from very, very small, half acre or even less. I have done in the past, not so much at the moment, but all the way up. I've got a what will become a big case study, which you guys will see down the line when I edit the video footage and maps and so on, of a big 300 what I consider big 350 acre Angus beef farm. So they're really using holistic management and some of the tools I use with farmers, or even just homesteaders or people who've bought land and they have never farmed. It doesn't really matter, because holistic management in particular allows you to make decisions and monitor those decisions through time, and build your skill set and knowledge base to grow a farming enterprise, even if it's just, selling lemon verbena tea, which I've been helping a landowner with who has a lot of lemon verbena on their property. And so just looking for them at the actual marketing and packaging side, because they can start a farm enterprise, but that it's better for them to start that enterprise with what they actually have, the tools and the skill set that they have now, rather than dreaming up a farm that they don't actually have those resources yet. But they can still move towards that dream. But it's better to actually be in the now of what kind of enterprise or what kind of products you can actually start producing virtually straight away from the land. So
Jarod, can I ask you then, when you think of farming, I think, we kind of all have a different picture about what that looks like, including mono farms with, the one kind of produce.
yes.
Where do you, there's a history of farming. Where are you steering people towards with the idea of farming?
Thank you. Yeah, that's a very good question. So there's really several things, back to the financial, ecological, and then social. I'll jump into the ecological a little bit now, I suppose. And basically, there's some pretty solid rules, I think, for ecological growing. One is that there shouldn't be any bare soil for any great length of time. Obviously, there are some contexts that bare soil will happen in the farming system, but as a general rule, I say it shouldn't be for more than just a few days, 3 at the most, and that can easily be achieved even on wheat farms, even on big cropping farms, canola, etc. However, those monoculture farms are not really the future, and we're seeing higher inputs, costs. I mean, urea's gone up 600% in the last 7 or 8 months, as well as pretty much everything else, diesel costs, and so on and so forth. And the market is very volatile, goes up and down, so it's very difficult to plan for profit. So it's very easy to start putting, if you like, your eggs in different baskets. And cropping farms, for example, can move into some grazing enterprises. Many already do, but if you use holistic planned grazing, they can actually start moving into building fertility, even on a large, thousands and thousands of acres of cropping farm. So there's other concepts like pasture cropping that does work as well. And so even if they are still reliant on that enterprise, they can actually make a transition very, very slowly but surely into other enterprises or complementary enterprises like livestock, that can manage their fertility better than urea and petroleum-based fertilizer. So no bare soil is a general rule. The other one that I work with is probably not so familiar to people, but is really showing to be the most powerful aspect of ecological sustainable farming, is working with ecological succession, which I mentioned before. A little bit beyond the scope of this particular video to go into the ins and outs of how you do that. It can be applied to grassland, orchards, truffle nut and nut farming, and even market gardening, vegetables as well. So it really is all encompassing in terms of its application in different types of contexts of farming. So you can find out a lot more about sort of ecological succession and what it means when you grow in that way through some of the workshops I do and so on as well. And it maybe the biggest influences on me in terms of farming that you can go away and take notes and look up more information yourself. There's definitely first and foremost holistic management, a la Alan Savory. Now it's associated with grazing plans and rotational planned grazing, but it's actually a framework and toolbox for decision making and planning, and it's the most powerful management framework that I've ever come across, particularly for landowners and farmers. And the other one is, of course, I used to be a permaculture teacher, and was really is still my first love, and permaculture designer, and I think it's still very relevant with its framework and its initial input of ethics and principles, which not many agricultural systems start with, or agriculture, social, cultural, all tied into one. I did it as a young man, spent some time in Tasmania on Bill Mollison's property, and have co-taught with many of the kind of alumni of the permaculture movement, and many of them are great friends of mine now as well. The last one is going to be quite new to most Australians, and it's called syntropic agriculture. So in physics, syntropy is the opposite of entropy. So again, going back to that successional spiral upwards of fertility, not through composting, not through fertilizer or minerals, but actually through timed disturbance and working with species succession through time to build that fertility, which happens naturally in both grasslands, symbiotically connected to grazing animals, and also in forests or savanna, if you like, which often is that edge effect of still with animal impact, but still forest as well. They can all go all the way into just a classic forest with no animal impact besides the human, of course, impacting that forest. So those are probably the three main farming practices that I've been most inspired by, and also, that also contain social and cultural elements that help tie in what I do as well.
Yeah, which is very different to the planting for the next season's crop, and then taking the yield from that, and then thinking about 1 year after the next. You kind of really, when you're talking about syntropics, it's really, how does the leaves, when they fall and they lay on the ground and they turn into mulch, and the animals come and they do the and all the layering up, and how that makes the richness of the soil. And am I on the right track with that?
Absolutely perfect. What a vision. Because, if you look under a decent forest that hasn't been continuously burnt in the wrong pattern, so sometimes it's a little bit hard to find in certain parts of Australia, but what you'll find is that naturally the forest soil is sponge cake. I like to call it chocolate cake. It's spongy. And you can actually create that rather quickly through ecological succession. So if you go back to the permaculture concept of the food forest, there was a little bit of thought process and some really cool implementation into the food forest concept. But with Anne Scosh's work with syntropic agriculture, that then takes it to another level, particularly looking at exactly what timing to prune and what plants to use in a family or consortium, or I think in permaculture you call it companion planting, and how that works in a much more kind of precise and detailed way to what food forests kind of ever achieve. Having tried to implement many food forests over the years myself and making pretty much every mistake in the book. But as old Bill Mollison says, make mistakes often, and the best lessons are in your mistakes. So, yeah. And then I still play around and use things like biochar and the natural farming, where you harvest wild ingredients or you inoculate from the forest the fungi and bacteria and microorganisms. That just gives that little boost and kick. So, so I still use things like compost and biodynamic composts and natural farming fertilizers, where you're making a fertilizer from eggshells or the banana flour or whatever. But the main driver now of my orchard, and what will be a much larger system that has animal integration in the future, down in Bridgetown, is that ecological succession. And what it allows you to do is farm with very, very few, if any, inputs besides knowledge, precise timing, and management, if you like. So, if we go back to the fact that the Amazon is a man-made rainforest, and that's why it's so diverse, and takes us back to the idea that instead of us being a blight on the land in our food production, we actually tie into that whole process and create a lot of abundance and beautiful soil. So just going back to what you're saying, most farmers are working just with one crop, and they're specialized in their crop. And they also, they tend to use, they have a lot of debt, and a lot of large scale machinery that they can't shift their enterprise very easily, because that equipment is basically only used just for harvesting that wheat, or that cherry picker is only used just for harvesting orchard fruit. And so it locks them into monoculture. So many farmers want to diversify, but they find it very difficult to diversify when they're locked into that big machinery and monoculture and debt. So that ties back to what I'm saying, where young people can approach farmers, and that's how I got into farming, is approaching older farmers, building a relationship with them, and eventually making an enterprise that just joins onto their farm and is complementary, like putting a chicken tractor through an orchard, and that reduces the fertilizer cost of the orchard farmer without affecting any of his management of his orchard. So it's an entry point for people who really want to learn the skills of farming on something a little bit more large scale. And it's a complementary, symbiotic relationship with the farmer because you're reducing his fertilizer costs. So there's just a fun example. It's actually something I did for a little while. So, yeah.
Jarod, can you talk to the new method that people want to get into farming now that, with community, being able to do joint ventures and things?
Yeah, that's exactly what this 300-acre property in Bridgetown is all about. So, I guess I'm the farm manager, instructor, but the people involved are people who've bought into the land. I don't like the word intentional community anymore, but let's just say, we're calling it the listening tree community. And of course, they have no farming experience, and even some of them have limited gardening experience, but it doesn't matter because I'm there to meet them where they are with holistic management and take them through the process of learning to live on land and creating their own little enterprises. Some of them won't end up being farmers, but they've got wonderful machinery operation experience. They've got good marketing skills, or they're welders or whatever, which will tie into the community particularly well when we do start scaling up these systems a little bit, so that we can build our own chicken tractors, we can fix our own machinery, we can do the marketing, we can cook foods. People who might not necessarily want to do all the farming work will end up processing that food into more value-added products as well, which then takes the pressure off that pressure of high production commodity farming, so that we can grow our skill sets together slowly while still making a profit off the land as a community. Yeah.
Wow, that's really amazing. Can you tell us, because there's lots of mistakes that you can make along the way, like you said. And, we have to, with lots of communities wanting to get together and lots of people who are kind of putting the idea out there, or I have some land and, maybe we can do something here. What's some of the very, straight off the bat, things that people need to be aware of when they are looking at this as an idea?
You're very good at asking questions. That's a perfect question. Yeah, so there's a couple of things that I would say, advice. First of all, don't spend money on unnecessary things and things that don't give you a good yield straight away, i.e. profit. And even if you're just a homesteader, I highly recommend that you just scale up whatever you just focus on one or two things. So let's say you've got half an acre, which is still actually a lot of land for one person to manage. Just focus on really perfecting, let's just say eggs and vegetables. Don't worry about an orchard. Don't worry about all this long-term stuff and beautiful ponds and this and that and big infrastructure projects and all of that. Rather just focus on one, or at most two things that you can really perfect before you start moving on to those things that require bigger investment. And often people do it the opposite way. They build the buildings and they get all going and they get machinery and they do this and they do that. And they start buying trees and half of them die. And a farm can be a money sink very quickly, or even an eco village or a a homestead can be a money sink very quickly if you're not, and that comes back to what I teach with holistic management, holistic planning. Oh, thank you. Perfect explanation. And then the other things I've found is, most farmers are good at growing things and fixing machinery, but not very good at distribution and marketing. So, and that's a lesson I learned being a seed saver and market gardener, having all this wonderful vegetables to sell and not being able to get it to market because I was, 2 or 3 hours from a big city, and I was thinking I could just make a couple of phone calls and get rid of the produce, and marketing takes up a lot more time than that. And I always say start small. It might not be very profitable at the beginning of your journey. If you're really trying to turn this into a livelihood, but if you start small, you'll learn those little adjustments and lessons and monitoring what's going on, and that feedback can then be used to grow and grow and grow. And that's exactly what I'm now embodying with the products I do sell. I'm not jumping into products that are really large scale, that require gigantic refrigeration, that require really complex bureaucracy and paperwork and stuff. I'm going to be moving into products that are a little bit more like that, but that's only when I've built the farm up and built the skill set up of all the people involved.
How do you then avoid becoming a mono farmer if you're getting good at one or two things?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, so it's kind of like an ideal, you want to get to that perfect, ideal, but of course you need to survive today. And so there's a couple of enterprises I do recommend people get into that have some sustainability behind them, but certainly not the highest ideal of sustainability. For me, my highest ideal and what I'm trying to achieve way in the future on the Bridgetown farm is to have value-added meat and egg products, and mostly grass and everything grown for the animals on the farm. And then orchard and nut and vegetable integrated products, but all from heirloom and heritage seed, including the cuttings and so on for the fruit nut trees, so that we can actually go back to growing all of our produce, including fruits and nuts, from seed, which is a long process, many years down the line. So that's the dream, but the enterprises I'm starting with are not those, because chestnuts take 10 years plus to get nuts, and the fruit trees are going to take 4, 5, 6 years, and the grazing and fencing I need for the animals and so on is going to take a couple of years from now. So the enterprises, just in my context that I started with, is already the fruit on the orchard I manage. Things like lemon verbena tea, prickly pear, which is a low succession fruit, that's actually quite tasty and is quite valuable. People are looking for it, but it's not available in the supermarkets. It takes a lot of skill and patience to harvest this product, which I have, but the supermarkets and normal farmers don't. So finding that little niche, growing things like microgreens or vegetables is a quick way to get started, but is a little bit labor intensive. But if you're a high energy person, it's a good way to start. Highly profitable is doing meat chickens in Joel Salatin style pens, but does require a skill set that you have to learn, and is not the most sustainable way to start, but it's very profitable, and you can use that profit to invest in the higher ideal farming. And I think that's truly sustainable, because we're not going to walk into a sustainable farming system or perfect sustainable regenerative, permaculture style farming system just overnight. You don't just walk onto land. So you do have to make some, in our modern world, and with the need of money and possibly debt payments and so on, you will need to start with things that might not be your highest ideal, but they are used to invest into that highest ideal as you move forward.
Yeah, brilliant answer. Thank you for that. So when I don't know if many people who are watching live in this call at the moment, if they're on property, but if you have a small amount, and maybe, because this is blowing my mind actually, because who knew that you could actually make money from farming? I thought that was just,
You can make a city wage. You can make a city wage farming, yes, with low investment, yes. But
wow.
Yeah.
And then, so getting on to, where should people start in their own backyards right now?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, look, you can start so small. Microgreens you can grow out of your bedroom, and it might not make you a full-time wage, but it might make, you can actually, if you've got a little bit to invest in the right equipment and stuff. I used to grow microgreens back in New Zealand for a little bit. But, you've got to do your due diligence and gain the skill set. So that might take a few years or a year or something. So just have fun with it, be in the now and enjoy the process of learning it first. And then you can, step into looking at the real, the accounting and planning and business planning of it. So yeah, you can make a profitable business in a tiny little room with microgreens. Now, microgreens aren't the most sustainable, because you're reliant on the system seed, and maybe some grow lights and temperature control. But what it will, you'll start embodying what happens with seeds, which, if you are doing that, you'll start meeting different people, and you may then be able to move into more vegetable growing, which is also not the most sustainable, because you're still reliant on the system for seeds. And seed saving is something I'm working at the moment with a landowner in the hills of Perth. Probably the best soil and best spring water I've ever seen. I don't know if you look on my Facebook, the garlic is like that big coming off their land and so on. And they're the perfect, they have the right volition and skill set and drive to become a really large producer of some of the best quality heirloom seed in Perth, in WA, and possibly even further afield. And so I'm working together with them over the next few years to build that capacity, because one of the big problems for us, particularly vegetable growers, is actually getting our hands on good open pollinated heirloom seed that can be saved by the gardener. It's very, very, very difficult. The seed world is probably on its knees more than any other industry, because it's so globalized. 99% of the carrot seed is grown in New Zealand or Holland, just two countries. So when you go to, Bunnings, or even when you get open pollinated heirloom seeds, they come from America or New Zealand or Holland. And that's not sustainable in the long run. So that's actually a very exciting, more long-term consultancy and project I'm working on with a lovely couple who have that beautiful land. And it'll start addressing and hopefully act as a model for seed saving, from any level, but at least on a slightly larger scale, so that can then go out to people in Western Australia. So I'm actually very, very excited about that one. So I've gone around and around.
And Western Australia and New South Wales.
Exactly. Yeah. Hopefully, as a model, that someone else can do it in New South Wales and in Victoria and in Tasmania and in Queensland, Northern Territory, wherever, even New Zealand. But New Zealand has some pretty cool, if you look up Coango Gardens, they're doing something along those lines in terms of heritage seed and heritage fruit trees. And I spent a lot of time there. Kay Baxter is particularly talented when it comes to saving that heritage seed and heritage heirloom fruit trees. So something we desperately need here in WA and Australia, people to get into that.
Yeah, amazing. So I probably do have some people who want to ask questions. So if you do have a question, you can either type it in or raise your hand, and we can take some questions because it's just really fascinating, everything that you've been sharing. And so we want to know, are you in touch with communities who are around Australia who are doing what you're doing, starting up land projects? And do you have a system? Because I'm sure that when you're starting this up, there's kind of a way that you induct people into your system. And is there a right way of doing that?
Yeah. It takes a lot of patience and comprehending their context, and then diving a bit deeper into what they really want from the land and what they want with their community. A lot of people, as you said, are trying to get out of the system, so to speak, especially now. I've been banging this drum for over 10 years, but that's okay. The pioneers tend to be the ones that go through all the pain, so we can share it with the early adopters, which is you guys. I'm so happy that there's more and more people now really getting interested in self-reliance, permaculture farming, living in community, reconnecting to land, et cetera, et cetera. So it really does depend on people's context. You can train in holistic management. I believe Brian Wellberg from Inside Out Management for people in New South Wales. But I believe he does sometimes do holistic management training around the country. Now, don't stress, because a lot of people say, "Oh, that's not for me because it's all about planned grazing," and it is. But don't take those tools because you're not all going to go out there and become pastoral graziers. But it's more about the framework of decision making and navigating how you can move towards your highest goals while still dealing with right now, today, finances, skill sets I need to learn, workshops I need to, and so it just helps you navigate. It's been the most powerful framework and toolbox for me, trying for me to move into the lifestyle I want, and the business and farming enterprises I want. So holistic management, probably the premier person to learn from in syntropic agriculture, if you're interested in producing fruits and vegetables in a radically sustainable, regenerative way. That does take a lot of study, but is well worth studying. Is syntropic agriculture, and definitely putting a plug for my friend Scott Hall at Syntropia. And he's based in Queensland. So that just gives you, there you go. Someone said Brian is a great trainer, has training sessions in WA at the moment. There you go. So Brian's teaching holistic management at the moment. What I tend to do is I do my workshops more on the agroforestry side. because there's, people like Brian who are great trainers in holistic management. Although a lot of the holistic management, as you can probably tell, will tie in to my workshops. But then I also offer consultancy and, and can meet people at different levels, different times, different price points, depending on their context and what they're trying to achieve. And so, it really doesn't, because of the nature of my farming experience and what I've learned over the years, it doesn't really matter if you're an eco-village community, homestead, small scale, tiny scale farmer, all the way up to grazing, pastoral, livestock farming. I can help you in the more ins and outs. People like Brian and Scott will give you the fundamentals and the basis of where to start. But where I'm focusing is bioregionally, mostly in the southwest of Western Australia, and I've done a lot of bushcraft and survivalist, whatever you want to call it, work where I know a lot about the native species and so on, and how that can tie into you living on the land, and that's why I focus on the southwest and a bit more where I actually come onto the land and help you embody that knowledge, embody that holistic management and syntropic agriculture and biodynamics and things like that. So a little bit more, you might want to get the foundation and the fundamentals and sit with that and embody that. And then that's where I come in, is where you're really wanting to implement and plan out how you're going to set up your property. So that's just that slight difference. It's a bit more of the detail and actually helping you really move into that lifestyle that you're looking for.
Wow, our WA friends will be really glad to hear that. They have someone like you in their back corner, so that's really awesome.
Yeah. There's some really beautiful practitioners over east. Another one is, I think his name's Dane. Let me just check. Sorry, bear with me. Is it Dane?
That's all right.
Yeah. No, I've forgotten his name now. Just plug in guys that I know that will really give you real value where you are, because obviously I can't come over east.
So do you have to give us some, I guess, for our backyard gardeners?
Yes.
What tips do you have for us?
Yeah, one I like to say, get some heirloom seeds, and don't try and build a ultra diverse garden initially. If this is if you really are like close to a beginner gardener or intermediate. Right now, let's talk about right now. Winter time. Maybe just grab 3 different seeds, heirloom, open pollinated, so that you can save the seed, and start 2 separate gardens. One for the vegetable that you're going to eat. So let's say maybe broccoli, leek, and carrot, which for most people in Australia can be grown through the winter. Obviously, some parts it's too cold, but for the vast majority of Australia, we can grow that right now. 2 different gardens, one for seed saving, and the other for eating the vegetable, for harvesting the vegetable. Start very, very small. The permaculture principle, use small and slow solutions, is pertinent in this. And the seed-saving garden you will leave until the seeds are ripe, so it goes very woody and so on. And you'll end up with hundreds, if not thousands, depending on the carrot. You can end up with a lot of seed, which will then help you grow a bigger garden without having to go back to the store and buying seed. So you're now tying into that more sustainable way of thinking. And then finally, you still want to get that yield and satisfaction. So the other garden is just to harvest those vegetables and eat it. And you'll learn so much even just through that. and grow them in the same garden, those three, because you'll start learning about syntropic as well. So the broccoli is higher than the carrot, and the carrot grows slower, and the leek will be an emergent and pop up even after that and grow above the broccoli. So you'll actually start tying into the growing system I use on a really basic level, which later on you can expand on.
Wow, some really great tips there. I love that. Love that. We can all start somewhere, right? And
Exactly,
saving
yeah.
those seeds. And do you have a really smart organizational way of saving seeds?
Yeah, depends. Tomato seeds and stuff require a little bit of processing and stuff. But for the most part, I do it the old-fashioned way with threshing them, and I just treat it like meditation. Just go slowly and just enjoy it. Don't make it a chore. What I tend to do is make a cup of tea and sit down and on the couch and just do it really slowly while having a conversation or watching an inspiring video or something. And that way, it's not a chore. It's just part of the downtime outside of the garden.
So this might sound like a really silly question, but do you save them in packets or do you?
Sorry. Yeah, I've got a system I use. Sometimes I'll use packets later on, but it's just a staged event where I'll clean them up over a process where initially they might still have other litter in them in bowls, and then when I finally get to putting them in packet, they'll be clean. But I've got like a little small compartment, plastic. I haven't got it on me. Where I just pop the seeds into the different compartments. I highly recommend using labeling when you start out. For me, I don't use labeling that much anymore, unless it's like brassicas and things where you can look all exactly the same depending on the seed. So yeah, definitely masking tape and a pen or a permanent marker on your whatever containers you're using to save seed. Keep them dry, not moist. That would be my initial advice, because people often grab their seed and then they don't know what it is for the next year's planting. Got no idea what they're planting.
Yeah, that's true.
Just one gentleman, biodynamic practitioner, certified organic farmer, and also helps people implement in the Mount Tamborine in Queensland, a good friend of mine. If you're in that region, obviously I'm not going to come out all the way. We're going to have to start focusing more bioregionally. And I would highly recommend him, same sort of skill set as myself, in terms of helping and implementing once you get to that stage. His name is Kane Dabous. So Kane and Dabbuss. His company is called Red Soil Organics, and he does sell biodynamic compost, probably the best compost in Australia, I would say. He's particularly talented at composting, but other things as well. So.
Beautiful sharing there. That's awesome. Lovely. Well, we've been really blessed. We do have one question in the chat about microgreens. Good microgreens education.
It's been years since I've done microgreens. You can find there's a guy. The way I started my microgreens, it's a free online. If you're patient, I can maybe find it. Many years ago now that I did microgreens.
We can always pop that in the comments in the
Yeah,
afterwards
with
if
that
it takes
one,
some time.
I'll share some resources on your channel, Kelly, as well as mine for that. So I'll note that down. There is actually a particularly good, almost step-by-step guide free online.
Okay.
That's the way I started my microgreens. So what I'll do is I'll take a note and I'll share that with you, because it is actually a particularly good resource. It's highly recommended, step-by-step, starting a microgreens business.
And I love how you point it towards business. Like, I just thought if we could just feed your family, you'd be happy. But, why not make a...
Yeah, there's still plenty of homesteading I do, that's not business orientated or enterprise orientated. I still sometimes, I still produce eggs and I don't sell them often. And, there's like, I grow sapotes, but I haven't got enough to sell, black sapotes, just for myself. So there's still, I'm a homesteader, self-reliant person that then just specializes in the odd enterprise to make sure that I can stay in the lifestyle without having to go get a city job. So.
Yeah, and I'm all about that. If you can, turn a passion or, something that you have to do anyway into something that supports your family, that's what we're all about. And, keeps you out of a regular job. How good's that?
Yeah, long road to freedom, but it's worth it.
It's worth it.
Another question: how many acres am I on? So I still manage a 3/4 acre orchard up in the Perth Hills, and that's the orchard I pick from to sell my fruit and sometimes eggs and lemon verbena and basil and other products at the moment. I make like feijoa, bucha, like a kombucha, what else? Pickle things and sell them as well. But the next project, now that I've expanding and with my business, is a almost 300-acre property, and it's managed with a community, not just myself. And that's just in its early phases of development. Currently produces quite a bit of garlic, apples, almonds, apricots, peaches, plums, and a few other things on more of a homestead level, vegetables and some other things. But I was there actually over this last week doing a lot of future plantings, and that will grow into around 20 acres of intense syntropic agricultural production, and forestry as well, so firewood and biochar, and also timber for furniture production, because it's about 150 plus acres of really beautiful jarrah, marri, and other eucalyptus species trees that we will eventually harvest as well, and also some livestock production. This is all future. Some livestock production on pasture within the rows of the syntropic system, which will be eggs and probably pasture, only grass-fed animals besides the eggs. So lamb and also rabbit and geese. So I'm not so into the other poultry because they require a lot of omnivorous food that's not really that sustainable. So I'm going to try and market more geese, so grass-fed. Obviously, lamb is grass-fed. And yes, someone just asked, there will be small amounts of honey. At this stage, it's not in the context to make it a big-scale thing, so it'll just be sold locally. Currently, there are three beehives on the property as we speak, and looking to expand that as well.
Yeah, brilliant. Brilliant. I think some of us want to move out to to WA now.
Yeah, well, get in touch and we can make it happen. Anywhere in the southwest of Western Australia.
Yeah, lovely. And yeah, if would you doing any consulting for people in the eastern states as well?
Yeah, I can do a little bit of some phone calls and detailed stuff, but I do recommend that from what I know, maybe you can get in touch with me, tell me what part of the East Coast you're on, or Tassie, or wherever, South Australia, wherever, and I generally, with all my contacts in the regenerative agricultural space, can get you in touch with someone more local, because they'll have that more fine-grained knowledge of local species, local soils, local things, local resources. So yes, I can do small consultations over the phone or over Zoom or whatever, video, but I do recommend even at, maybe an initial consultation, but when you start getting into the fine grained stuff, look for someone a little more local, or at the very least within your state.
Brilliant. Well,
yes, I've got yabbies in a dam on that as well. Particularly good farming enterprise in WA. The marron and yabby, the small freshwater crayfish species, unique here to WA, like marron. But I think yabbies are all over the place, but marron's quite unique to WA and is a booming industry, particularly in for fine dining restaurants and some of those fancy restaurants you've got in Sydney as well. So.
Well, you've been amazing to listen to, Jarod. You've got a wealth of knowledge, and there's lots more that we can talk about. And if you've enjoyed listening to Jarod tonight, you will be able to hear him on I think it's the 27th of July at 8 p.m. our Eastern time, or 6 p.m. WA time, to be able to hear more from Jarod in our summit. And we love everything that you've shared with us tonight. It's just absolutely
pleasure,
mind-blowing. How good.
Absolute pleasure, guys. Yeah, no, now's the time. Everyone's interested. We can all together move into more self-reliance, more sustainability, more regenerative thinking, and slowly but surely live the good life. That's what everyone's looking for, right?
Yeah, well said. Beautiful. Well, thank you everyone for joining us, and we look forward to having you on next week when we have amazing speaker Rob. He's written a book called let me find the title, which you will absolutely love. It says The Healing Power of Cancer. So we're going to hear from Rob next week with that. So yeah, amazing, right? Okay, so join us then. We'll just see you all again very soon. Take care. Good night. Bye for now.
Good night, everyone.